That morning, Andrew Jackson saved the company from losing $50 million. That afternoon, he got fired. The reason? He fell asleep. Sounds insane, right? But it's true. And here's the crazier part. The person who fired him was the new CEO. She'd been in the job exactly 45 minutes. She walked in, saw Andrew, head down on his desk, surrounded by 24 monitors blazing red alerts. She didn't ask questions, didn't listen. Just gave the order, confiscate his badge, terminate him immediately. Andrew didn't even get to finish one sentence. But what the CEO didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Andrew had just spent 48 hours awake, stopping a cyber attack that was counting down by the second. He'd built the defenses by hand. He'd patched the system piece by piece. He'd left a clear warning: do not restart the system. They restarted it 3 hours after firing him, and everything collapsed, exactly like he said it would. This is the story of a 34-year-old black man, a single father, who carried an entire company on his shoulders in silence, and about a young CEO who learned the most expensive lesson of her career: never judge a person by 10 seconds of a passing glance, because sometimes the person who looks like they're sleeping is the one saving your life. That morning, Andrew Jackson saved the company from losing $50 million. That afternoon, he got fired. The reason? He fell asleep. Sounds insane, right? But it's true. And here's the crazier part. The person who fired him was the new CEO. She'd been in the job exactly 45 minutes. She walked in, saw Andrew, head down on his desk, surrounded by 24 monitors blazing red alerts. She didn't ask questions, didn't listen. Just gave the order: confiscate his badge, terminate him immediately. Andrew didn't even get to finish one sentence. But what the CEO didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Andrew had just spent 48 hours awake, stopping a cyber attack that was counting down by the second. He'd built the defenses by hand. He'd patched the system piece by piece. He'd left a clear warning: do not restart the system. They restarted it 3 hours after firing him, and everything collapsed, exactly like he said it would. This is the story of a 34-year-old black man, a single father, who carried an entire company on his shoulders in silence, and about a young CEO who learned the most expensive lesson of her career: never judge a person by 10 seconds of a passing glance, because sometimes the person who looks like they're sleeping is the one saving your life. Margaret Anderson's heels hit the polished floor at 7:45 in the morning. First day as CEO, 29 years old, youngest in the company's history, which meant every eye in this building would be watching, waiting for her to slip. She wasn't going to slip. The operations center stretched before her. Rows of workstations, monitors everywhere, engineers hunched over keyboards, the hum of servers, the smell of burnt coffee and stress. And there, center console, a man, asleep. Margaret stopped walking. His head rested on his forearms. 24 monitors surrounded him, every single one scrolling red alerts. Fast, too fast. The screens looked angry, but he was asleep, at the most critical station in the entire company. Margaret's jaw tightened. This was exactly what her grandfather had warned her about. Comfort culture, complacency. People who thought showing up was enough. Not anymore. She pointed to security. 2 officers near the entrance. They straightened immediately. Remove his access badge. Terminate him. Now the room went silent. Actually silent. Like someone had hit pause on the entire floor. The man's head lifted slowly. Disoriented. Eyes bloodshot. He blinked 3 times before focusing on her. Margaret didn't give him time to recover. This company does not pay anyone to sleep on the job. He tried to speak. His mouth opened. Ma'am, the payment system has a... She cut across him. Clean. Decisive. I don't need excuses on my first morning. Security. His badge. HR will process termination paperwork immediately. The man looked at her. Not with anger. Not with desperation. With something else. Urgency. The kind that comes from watching something preventable about to happen. He tried once more. If anyone restarts the authentication... Margaret had already turned to the security officer moving toward him. I've said everything I'm going to say. The man stood slowly, didn't argue, didn't raise his voice, just reached for his badge holder, removed it with steady hands. No drama, no scene. Before walking out, he looked at a younger engineer standing nearby. Kevin, whatever happens, do not restart the authentication cluster. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else assumed it was bitterness. A fired employee making threats. Margaret registered it as nothing meaningful at all. She'd already filed the morning under necessary leadership, the first clean signal that comfortable negligence was over. The man walked toward the exit, slow, like someone who had nothing left in his legs. He hadn't been given a single opportunity to explain. The door closed behind him. Margaret turned to face the room. I expect everyone at their stations. Full focus, full accountability. That's the standard now. Engineers nodded. A few looked away. Nobody spoke. She moved on to her next stop. Department heads waiting in conference room B. Her first executive briefing. Behind her, the monitors around the empty console continued scrolling. Red alerts. Red alerts. Red alerts. Nobody was looking at them anymore. 3 days earlier, Monday night, 11 p.m., Andrew Jackson's apartment was quiet. The kind of quiet that only happens after a 7-year-old finally falls asleep. He sat at the dining table. Laptop open. Routine system check before bed. Something he did every night. Force of habit from 15 years in infrastructure security. The logs loaded. International authentication queue. Standard traffic patterns. Except Andrew leaned closer. There. A cluster of requests. Low frequency. Irregular timing. But not random. Too clean to be random. He pulled the data back 6 hours. Then 12. Then 24. The pattern held. Consistent. Methodical. Someone probing. Not attacking yet. Learning. Andrew's chest tightened. He knew this rhythm. He'd seen it twice before in his career. Once at a financial firm in Boston. Once at a healthcare network in Chicago. Both times it had been the precursor to something catastrophic. He ran a trace. Followed the requests backward through the network architecture. Found the entry point. A secondary authentication relay. Low priority. Handling a narrow subset of cross-border payment verifications. The kind of system most people forgot existed, which made it perfect for infiltration. Andrew stood. Walked to the small printer on the kitchen counter. Printed the network architecture diagrams. Spread them across the table. 6 pages. Dense with nodes and pathways. He grabbed a red marker from Emily's art supplies. Started tracing. The intrusion path wound through the system like a crack, spreading through ice. Slow. Deliberate. Testing which nodes connected to what. Andrew's hand moved faster. He marked every compromised segment, every potential expansion route. Every there, he stopped, buried in the restart protocol. A trigger mechanism, dormant, waiting. If anyone performed a standard system restart, something engineers did constantly to clear memory buildup, the trigger would activate, and everything Andrew was looking at would collapse. They weren't trying to break in loudly. They were waiting for Titan Core to open the door themselves. Andrew wrote a note in the margin of the printout, his handwriting tight and fast. They're waiting for us to pull the trigger ourselves. He checked the clock. 11:47 p.m. Emily would wake up at 6:30. He'd need to get her ready for school. Make breakfast, braid her hair. But this couldn't wait. Andrew opened a new document, started typing. Technical summary, risk assessment, recommended immediate actions. By the time he finished, it was 12:35 a.m. He'd email this to Robert Williams first thing in the morning. Operations Director, Andrew's direct supervisor. Williams had authority to authorize emergency system shutdowns. Andrew saved the file, closed the laptop, walked to Emily's room, cracked the door. She was asleep. Stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin, her breathing slow and even. He stood there for 10 seconds, just watching. Then went back to the dining table, opened the laptop again, because something about the secondary vector bothered him. The way it was positioned. Too convenient, too perfectly placed. He pulled up the access logs, started reading. By 2 a.m., he'd found the backup entry point. They hadn't built 1 door. They'd built 2. Tuesday morning. 7:15 a.m. Andrew stood in Emily's doorway. Time to wake up, baby. She rolled over. Blinked at him. Is it morning already? It's morning. Emily sat up. You look tired, Daddy. Andrew smiled. Tried to. I'm okay. Let's get you ready. Breakfast was toast and scrambled eggs. Emily talked about her upcoming science project. Something about plant growth and sunlight. Andrew listened. Responded at the right moments. But his mind kept circling back to the network diagrams. After breakfast, he braided her hair. Emily sat still, patient. She knew the routine. Hold still for me. I am holding still, I know. You're doing great. He finished the braid, checked it twice. Good enough. They drove to school. Emily kissed his cheek before getting out. Love you, Daddy. Love you too, baby. Have a good day. He watched her walk through the school entrance, backpack bouncing, then drove to Titan Core Financial. The operations center was already half full when Andrew arrived. 8:30 a.m. Early for most people. Normal for him. Kevin Harris looked up from his station. Jackson, you're here early even for you. Andrew didn't sit at his desk. Went straight to Robert Williams's office. Williams was on a call. Held up one finger. Wait, Andrew waited. 5 minutes. 10. Williams finally hung up. What is it, Jackson? Andrew didn't waste time. Sir, we have a level 3 security breach. I need authorization to take the payment systems offline for emergency patching. Williams leaned back in his chair. His expression shifted. Not concern. Annoyance. Margaret Anderson takes over in 72 hours. I'm not starting her tenure with a crisis. This is the crisis. If we wait, Williams cut him off. Monitor it. Keep an eye on it. Don't escalate further. That's final. Andrew stood there. 3 seconds of silence. Processing, sir. The breach has a dormant trigger embedded in the restart protocol. If anyone performs standard maintenance. I heard you, Jackson. Monitor it. Don't create alarm. We're in a transition period. The last thing we need is panic. Andrew's jaw tightened. And if the breach activates? Williams's eyes narrowed. Then you'll have been monitoring it and you'll handle it. That's your job. Now if there's nothing else, I have another call in 2 minutes. Andrew left the office. Kevin was waiting in the hallway. What'd he say? He said no? No. Kevin's face fell. So what are we gonna do? Andrew looked at him, straight on. I'm going to fix it myself. Tuesday. Day 1 of the siege. Andrew dropped Emily at Shirley Moore's apartment at 8 a.m. Shirley lived down the hall, 68 years old. Retired teacher. She'd been watching Emily since Linda died. I have some big work today, Miss Shirley. Can you keep her tonight? Shirley nodded, already reaching for Emily's hand. Of course, honey. You take care of whatever you need. Emily looked up at her father, her eyes serious. Too serious for 7. You look tired, Daddy. Andrew crouched down, met her at eye level. I'll rest soon, baby. I promise, he meant it when he said it. The server room at Titan Core was cold. Always cold. Kept at 58 degrees to prevent hardware overheating. Andrew knelt on the concrete floor, cable management panel open in front of him. Physical rerouting. Old school. The kind of defense that couldn't be hacked remotely, because it required someone to physically disconnect and reconnect hardware. His shirt stuck to his back despite the cold. Sweat from effort. From stress, he was building isolation barriers, manually segmenting the compromised relay from the core payment systems. If the attackers tried to expand from their foothold, they'd hit a wall. Physical. Unhackable. Unless someone reconnected the cables, which they wouldn't. Because Andrew was the only one who knew they'd been disconnected. Kevin appeared in the doorway. You've been in here for 3 hours. Andrew didn't look up. I'm almost done with this section. Can I help? Go back to your station. If anyone asks where I am, tell them I'm running diagnostics. Kevin hesitated, then left. Andrew worked until his hands cramped, until his knees ached from kneeling on concrete, until the isolation barriers were in place. Phase 1 complete. He stood, stretched, checked his phone. 4 p.m. Emily would be having snack time at Shirley's. Probably apple slices and peanut butter. Her favorite. Andrew walked back to the operations center, grabbed coffee from the break room. Black. No sugar. It tasted burnt. Didn't matter. He had 16 more hours of work ahead of him. Tuesday night. 10 p.m. The operations floor was nearly empty. Just the night crew. 3 engineers. 2 monitoring specialists. 1 senior tech who barely looked up when Andrew walked past. Andrew sat at his station, not his assigned desk. The primary console. The one with access to all systems simultaneously. Pulled up the authentication logs. Started building redirect layers. Software-level defenses to complement the physical barriers. If a suspicious transaction came through, the redirect would absorb it, route it to a dummy processing queue. Let Andrew examine it before it touched anything critical. It was delicate work. One wrong configuration and legitimate transactions would get caught in the dummy queue. Customers would see failed payments. Alarms would trigger. Andrew's hands moved across the keyboard. Steady, precise, muscle memory from a decade and a half of infrastructure work. His phone buzzed. Conference call from Shirley's number. He answered. Put it on speaker. Emily's face filled the screen. Daddy, you're missing bedtime. Her voice was small. Disappointed. Andrew's chest tightened. I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry. Daddy has to work tonight. When are you coming home? Soon? Tomorrow? Maybe tomorrow. Emily's bottom lip trembled, just slightly. Okay, I love you, baby. Love you too, Daddy. The call ended. Andrew stared at the blank screen for 10 seconds. Then set the phone down, turned back to the monitors. Redirect layer configuration. 62% complete. He kept working. Wednesday. Day 2. Andrew was still there when the morning shift arrived. Same clothes. Same station. His eyes were red-rimmed. Dry. He'd changed his shirt in the bathroom around midnight. Splashed water on his face. That was it. Robert Williams walked past at 9 a.m. Saw him. Stopped. Still here, Jackson? Andrew looked up. Yes, sir. Don't overdo it. We need you functional. Not burnt out. The words were concern-shaped. But Williams's tone was warning-shaped. Don't make this visible. Don't create a problem. Andrew nodded. Understood. Williams walked away. Kevin appeared 10 minutes later. Slid a cup of coffee onto Andrew's desk. You look like hell. Thanks, seriously. When's the last time you slept? I'm handling it. Kevin sat on the edge of the desk. Lowered his voice. Jackson, whatever you're doing, you can't do it alone. Let me help. Andrew shook his head. If this goes wrong, I need someone on the outside who can vouch for what happened. That's you. Stay clean. Stay at your normal station. Kevin's jaw tightened, but he stood. Walked away. Andrew turned back to the screens. Wednesday afternoon, 2 p.m. Clint Services appeared at Andrew's station. A woman named Patricia, 40s, efficient. Stressed, Jackson. We're getting reports of minor transaction delays on the international queue. Andrew kept typing. I'm handling it. How long have you been working on this? I'm handling it. Patricia's eyes narrowed. How long have you been at that desk? Andrew finally looked at her. Is there something specific you need? She hesitated. Then stepped back. Just keep me updated. Will do. She left. A colleague stopped by 15 minutes later. Marcus from Network Security. Hey Jackson, you been here all night? Just catching up on some things. Marcus looked at the monitors, at Andrew's face, at the empty coffee cups stacked nearby. If you say so, he walked away too. Everyone saw. Nobody understood. Wednesday evening. 6 p.m. Andrew discovered the second activation vector at 6:13 p.m. He'd been running deep packet inspection on outbound traffic, looking for anomalies, patterns that didn't match legitimate business activity. And there it was, a secondary pathway, completely separate from the first intrusion point, leading to a different segment of the authentication cluster. The attackers hadn't just built one door, they'd built two. Which meant if Andrew shut down the first entry point, they'd pivot to the second. And if he shut down both simultaneously without proper coordination, the system would interpret it as a critical failure. Auto-restart protocols would kick in, which would trigger the dormant mechanism. Game over. Andrew leaned back in his chair, rubbed his eyes. They felt like sandpaper. The timeline had just shortened. The attackers knew someone was blocking them. They were adapting, which meant they'd move to active phase sooner than Andrew had calculated. He pulled up a fresh document, started writing everything down. Technical notes, patch references, timeline, projections. Plain English summary at the bottom for anyone who didn't speak infrastructure. By 8 p.m., the documentation was complete. 47 pages. Every detail Andrew could think of. He saved it to the shared operations drive. Emailed it to the entire engineering group. Subject line, Cricker kill psychic alerts, read immediately. Then added a final note, larger font. Bold, do not restart authentication cluster under any circumstances. This is not a performance XU. This is a staged attack waiting to be triggered. If I am unavailable, call Andrew Jackson first. He added his cell number. Hit send, then called Emily. Shirley answered. She's right here, Andrew. Emily's voice came through. Sleepy. Hi, Daddy. Hi, baby. Did you have dinner? Miss Shirley made spaghetti. That's good. Did you do your homework? Uh-huh. Good girl. I love you. Love you too. Are you coming home soon? Andrew's throat tightened. Soon, sweetheart. Real soon, okay. Good night, Daddy. Good night, baby. The call ended. Andrew set his phone down, stared at it, then turned back to the monitors. Thursday morning, 6:30 a.m. Andrew had been awake for 48 hours straight. His hands shook when he typed. Too much caffeine. Not enough food. His vision blurred at the edges, but the defenses were in place. Isolation barriers, redirect layers, manual overrides on the auto restart protocols, monitoring dashboards tracking every suspicious packet. The system was stable, fragile, but stable. He just needed to hand this off to someone, explain it properly, make sure the morning shift understood what they were walking into. Margaret Anderson was taking over today. New CEO. Andrew had seen the announcement last week. He'd intercept her directly. First thing, bypass Williams entirely. Show her the documentation. Walk her through the threat. She'd understand. She had Andrew set an alarm on his phone, 7 a.m. That would give him time to clean up. Grab a fresh shirt from his emergency stash in his locker. Look presentable. He put his head down on his forearms, just for a minute. Just to rest his eyes. The alarm would wake him. It didn't. Thursday morning. 7:45 a.m. Margaret Anderson's heels hit the polished floor. First day as CEO. She walked into the operations center, saw a man asleep at the primary console. 24 monitors around him, all showing red alerts. She didn't ask questions, didn't check the screens, didn't give him a single moment to explain. Remove his access badge. Terminate him immediately. Andrew's head lifted, slowly. His mind fought through the fog of exhaustion, tried to place where he was. What was happening? A woman stood in front of him, young, professional, angry. He tried to speak. Ma'am, the payment system has a clock. She cut him off. Clean, final. I don't need excuses on my first morning. Security was moving toward him. Andrew stood. His legs almost buckled. 48 hours without sleep. His body was shutting down. He tried once more. Urgency overriding exhaustion. If anyone restarts the authentication, the woman, Margaret Anderson. He realized the new CEO had already turned away. I've said everything I'm going to say. Andrew reached for his badge. Hands steady despite everything. Removed it from the holder. No argument. No scene. But he couldn't leave without one more warning. He looked at Kevin, standing 3 desks away. Eyes wide. Frozen Kevin. Whatever happens, do not restart the authentication cluster. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else whispered something Andrew couldn't hear. Margaret Anderson registered none of it. Andrew walked toward the exit. Each step took effort. His body wanted to collapse, needed to collapse. The morning shift was arriving. People he'd worked with for years. They watched him leave. Nobody spoke. Nobody asked what happened. The door closed behind him. Andrew stood outside the building, 7:58 a.m. The sun was too bright. Everything was too loud. He pulled out his phone, called an Uber. While waiting, he checked his work email. Still had access. For now, 23 unread messages. Most from overnight. Automatic alerts. System notification, 3 from Kevin. Sent at 7:46. 7:52 subject lines. What happened? Are you okay? Call me. Andrew didn't respond. Couldn't the Uber arrive? Black sedan. Driver tried to make conversation. Andrew stared out the window. His phone buzzed. Text from HR. Formal termination notice. Effective immediately. Benefits information to follow. Andrew read it twice, then put the phone in his pocket. The apartment was exactly how he'd left it Tuesday morning. Emily's cereal bowl still in the sink, her backpack by the door. Schoolwork spread on the dining table, the network diagrams he'd printed Monday night. Still there. Red marker traces still visible. Andrew walked to the couch, sat down. Meant to take off his jacket, didn't. Pulled his laptop over. Opened it. The lock screen cycled through system monitoring dashboards, old habit. He kept remote access running even at home. He should call Shirley, let her know he was back. Ask about Emily he would. In a minute. Just needed to close his eyes for 1 second. He didn't open them. Friday, 12:30 p.m. Titan Core Financial, the operations center hummed with normal activity. Engineers at their stations. Monitors displaying standard workflows. Everything looked fine. Except, the authentication queue was showing elevated latency. Transactions backing up. Not critical, not yet. But trending upward, the senior tech on duty noticed it first. Pulled up the performance metrics. Memory accumulation in the authentication cluster. Classic symptom. Easy fix, standard protocol. Restart the service. Clear the memory. Back to normal in 90 seconds. He moved to execute the command. Kevin saw him. Stood up from his desk. Wait, the senior tech looked over. What? Jackson said not to restart it. Jackson was terminated yesterday. And we've got latency building. This is standard maintenance. Kevin's chest tightened. He said specifically. Robert Williams walked onto the floor. Is there a problem? The senior tech gestured to his screen. Minor latency issue. I'm running a standard restart to clear it. Williams nodded. Good, do it. Kevin stepped forward. Sir Andrew left documentation. He warned against restarting the authentication cluster. He said there's a... Williams cut him off. Expression hard. Andrew Jackson no longer works here. We have procedures for a reason. Execute the restart. The senior tech looked at Kevin, at Williams. Then back to his screen, timed the command. His finger hovered over the enter key. Kevin opened his mouth. To say what? To do what? Challenge the operations director on his first interaction? Get himself fired too? The senior tech pressed enter. The restart command executed. 12:47 p.m. for 90 seconds. Everything looked fine. Queue times dropped. Congestion cleared. The senior tech exhaled. Williams nodded, satisfied. Walked away. Then Hafid Hanum tokens went asynchronous. Tonentration sessions began reporting status. Unininidiald. Like they'd never started at all. Kevin watched his monitor. Watched the green indicators shift to amber. Amber to red? No. The senior tech spun around. What's happening? Kevin pulled up the network map. The visual representation of Titan Core's entire infrastructure. Red was spreading. Fast. Like spilled ink across paper. Outbound transaction routing rerouting. Not to Titan Core endpoints. To external addresses. Unverified. Unknown. High-value corporate transfers freezing. Suspended state. Not completed. Not cancelled. Just stuck. Someone shouted from across the floor. We're losing payment authentication. Someone else. Client services is getting calls about failed wires. Kevin grabbed his phone. Called Andrew straight to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. The operations center erupted into controlled chaos. Engineers at multiple stations simultaneously. Voices overlapping. Trying rollbacks. Trying isolations. Trying anything. Nothing worked. Because the architecture they were trying to restore had never been formally documented. It had been built live, in real time, by one person who wasn't there. Kevin pulled up Andrew's repository folder, the documentation he'd emailed Wednesday night. Opened the technical notes, started reading aloud to the senior tech. If authentication cluster is restarted, expect cascade failure in payment routing within 3 to 5 minutes. All defensive barriers will collapse simultaneously. The senior tech's face went pale. He wrote this when? Kevin checked the timestamp, Wednesday, 8:14 p.m. 72 hours ago, he knew this would happen. He told us not to restart. They looked at each other. Callan's services appeared. Patricia, her face tight with stress. We have JP Morgan on the line. Failed wire transfer. 2.3 million. They're demanding immediate explanation. Kevin's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Alerts, notifications, system failures cascading. The monitors around Andrew's empty station continued scrolling. Red alerts, red alerts, red alerts. Exactly like they had been when Margaret Anderson walked in yesterday morning. Exactly like Andrew had been watching for 48 hours straight before she fired him. Friday, 1 p.m., Margaret Anderson was in conference room B executive briefing with department heads, outlining her vision for operational efficiency, cultural transformation, accountability. Her assistant appeared in the doorway, face pale. Ms. Anderson, you're needed in operations immediately. Margaret's jaw tightened. Interruptions on day 2. Unacceptable. I'm in the middle of. Ma'am, it's critical. The tone cut through Margaret's irritation. She stood. Excuse me. We'll resume in 10 minutes. She walked to the operations center, heels clicking. Confident stride cleaved through the doors. The room had transformed. Yesterday it had been controlled, professional. Today it was chaos barely contained. Every monitor she could see was red. Engineers moving between stations. Voices raised, stress thick enough to taste. The CTO met her 3 steps inside. His face was gray. Ms. Anderson, we have a situation. What kind of situation? We're experiencing a coordinated cyber attack. Our payment infrastructure is compromised. Margaret's stomach dropped. How long has this been happening? The senior tech spoke up from his station. The breach? At least 72 hours. The crisis? Started when we restarted the system 17 minutes ago. 72 hours, 3 days. Margaret's mind raced. Why wasn't I informed of a breach? The CTO hesitated. It appears the breach was detected and reported. But escalation was blocked. Blocked by who? Operations Director Williams. Ma'am. Kevin appeared at Margaret's elbow. Laptop open. Ma'am, you need to see this. He pulled up a folder, repository files, time-stamped logs, documentation, 47 pages of technical notes, spanning from Monday night through Wednesday evening. Written by Andrew Jackson. Kevin scrolled to the final page. Large font. Bold text. Do not restart OFTAF. Cluster under any circumstances. This is not a performance XU. This is a staged attack waiting to be triggered. If I am unavailable, call Andrew Jackson first. A phone number followed. Margaret stared at the screen, her throat tight. Did anyone call this number? Silence. She looked up, scanned the room. Did anyone call him? Nobody met her eyes. Margaret's voice dropped, dangerously quiet. How bad is this? The CTO answered carefully, precisely, like he was defusing a bomb with words. Without Mr. Jackson's defensive architecture, we're looking at complete payment infrastructure failure within 2 to 3 hours. Current estimated customer losses exceed $50 million. Regulatory penalties, reputational damage, potential company extinction. The words landed like physical blows. Margaret had been CEO for exactly 32 hours, and she'd just terminated the only person who could have prevented this. Margaret's office, alone. She sat at her desk, hands flat on the surface, breathing carefully. 32 hours. That's how long she'd been CEO, and she'd already brought the company to the edge of extinction, not through malice, through certainty, through the absolute conviction that she understood what she was looking at. A man asleep at his desk, surrounded by red alerts. In her mind it had been simple, clear, obvious, negligence, laziness. Exactly the kind of comfortable complacency her grandfather had warned her about. Except, she'd been wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Margaret pulled up Andrew's documentation again. Read it from the beginning. Every technical note, every timestamp, every warning. Monday night, initial detection, 11:47 p.m., Tuesday morning, 8:36 a.m. Escalation to Williams, Tuesday afternoon through Wednesday evening. Continuous defensive work, building barriers, creating redirect layers, documenting everything. Wednesday night, 8:14 p.m. Final warning sent to entire engineering team, Thursday morning, 6:30 a.m. Still at his station, waiting to brief the incoming CEO. 7:45 a.m. Terminated before he could speak. Margaret's vision blurred. She blinked hard. The man she'd fired had spent 48 hours saving her company, while his daughter waited at home, while his body screamed for sleep, while everyone around him assumed he was handling routine work, and she'd judged him in 10 seconds. Margaret picked up her phone, dialed Andrew's number. It rang, and rang, and rang. Voicemail. She tried again. Same result, third attempt. Straight to voicemail this time. Margaret hung up, looked at the phone, then at Kevin's laptop. The emergency contact information visible in the HR file. Emergency contact, Shirley Moore. Neighbor listed dependent, Emily Jackson. Age 7. Daughter. Margaret's chest constricted. He has a child. a young child. And I fired him publicly without hearing one word. She stood, grabbed her coat, her keys. Her assistant appeared in the doorway. Ms. Anderson, the board is requesting immediate briefing. Tell them I'm handling it, they're insisting. Margaret's voice went cold, controlled. Tell them I'm fixing the mistake I made. When I'm done, they'll get a full report. She walked past, out of the office, to the parking garage. Her hands shook as she unlocked her car. The drive took 23 minutes. Traffic, construction, red lights that seemed to last forever. Margaret gripped the steering wheel, white-knuckled. Her mind kept replaying the morning. Andrew's face when he woke up, disoriented, exhausted, trying to speak, trying to warn her. She'd cut him off. Twice, hadn't given him a chance. Not one chance. The address led her to an older neighborhood, modest apartment buildings. The kind of place where people lived because it was affordable, not because it was convenient or impressive. Margaret parked, climbed the stairs to the second floor, found Unit 2B, stood outside the door. Her hand hovered, ready to knock, then stopped. What was she even going to say? Sorry I destroyed your livelihood. Sorry I didn't listen. Sorry I judged you without knowing anything about you. Margaret knocked anyway. Twice, hard enough to be heard. Waited. No answer. Knocked again. Louder this time. More insistent. Still nothing. She was reaching for her phone to try calling again when the door opened. A small girl stood in the gap, 7 years old. Hair in braids that were starting to come loose. Stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. The rabbit was worn, loved, clearly her favorite. The girl looked up at Margaret, calm, assessing. Eyes too old for her age. Are you from Daddy's work? Margaret's throat closed. She managed a nod. The girl studied her for another moment, then opened the door wider. No fear. Just careful evaluation. He's sleeping. He said something bad was happening at work and he had to fix it. He promised he'd rest after. Margaret stepped inside. The apartment was small, everything in its place. But the kind of organization that came from necessity, not from having help, not from abundance. Andrew was on the couch, same shirt as yesterday morning. Wrinkled now, jacket still on. One sleeve pushed up, the other still down, laptop open beside him. Lock screen cycling through system monitoring, dashboards. He'd never fully disconnected, one shoe off. Lying on the floor beside the couch, one still on his foot. Empty takeout containers on the kitchen counter. 3 of them. Different restaurants. Meals grabbed and eaten without thought across multiple days. A glass of water on the coffee table. Full. Like he'd poured it and then forgotten it existed. Margaret moved closer. Andrew's face. Exhaustion carved into every line. Dark circles under his eyes like bruises. His breathing deep, even. The kind of sleep that only comes when the body has been pushed past every limit and finally surrenders. On the small side table beside the couch, a framed photo. Andrew, a woman, a baby. The woman was beautiful, smiling, radiant. The baby was maybe 6 months old, chubby cheeks, tiny hands reaching toward the camera. The photo was at least 7 years old. Underneath it, a neat stack of papers, medical bills. Margaret could see the header on the top page. Linda Jackson, Oncology Department, Memorial Hospital, 3 years old, his wife. Dead. Cancer. Margaret looked away. Felt like she was intruding on something private. Something sacred. The little girl, Emily, was watching her. Daddy hasn't really slept in 2 days. Are you the new boss lady? Margaret couldn't speak, just nodded. Emily's expression shifted, became something softer, more thoughtful. He said you were smart. He said everyone should give you a chance. That's what Daddy always says. Everyone deserves a fair chance. The words hit Margaret like a physical blow. Andrew had defended her, to his daughter. After being fired, after being humiliated, after everything, he'd told Emily to give Margaret a chance. Margaret's vision blurred. She blinked hard, refusing to cry in front of this child. I need to wake him up, sweetie. Is that okay? Emily nodded. Serious. He asked me to wake him if anyone from work called. But his phone keeps buzzing and he doesn't hear it. Margaret walked to the couch, knelt beside it, close enough to see the exhaustion etched into Andrew's face. She touched his shoulder gently. Mr. Jackson, Andrew. No response. She shook slightly harder, not rough, but firm. Insistent. Andrew, I need you to wake up. His eyes opened partway. Unfocused, confused. He saw a woman in his apartment, didn't register who, blinked. Trying to orient himself, sat up slowly, every movement deliberate, like his body was fighting him. He looked at the woman. Recognition came gradually. His expression shifted. From confusion to exhaustion to something like resignation. Ms. Anderson. His voice was rough, like he'd swallowed gravel, like he hadn't had water in days. Margaret sat in the chair across from him. I need to say something before anything else. I was wrong yesterday morning. I fired you without listening. I judged you without knowing. I'm sorry. Andrew closed his eyes. Brief. Just a second. Not forgiveness. Not acceptance. Just acknowledgement. Margaret continued. Because the situation didn't allow her to wait for his response. Because $50 million was evaporating. While they sat here, they restarted the system. 47 minutes ago. Everything you predicted is happening. The company is failing. Nobody there understands your defensive architecture well enough to stop it. Andrew pulled the laptop closer, opened the remote monitoring interface. His hands moved automatically. Muscle memory taking over, the dashboards loaded. System status, transaction queues, network traffic, all of it. He scanned them. 45 seconds of silence. Reading data faster than most people could process. Then set the laptop down. How bad? Margaret didn't soften it, didn't sugarcoat. Complete infrastructure compromise. Potential losses over 50 million. Without your patch architecture, they estimate complete failure within 90 minutes. Andrew leaned back against the couch, rubbed his face with both hands, the weight of the situation settling over him. He looked at Emily first, not at Margaret, at his daughter. Baby, did you do your homework? Emily nodded. Solemn. Miss Shirley helped me with the hard math. Did you eat lunch? Grilled cheese? And apple slices. Is Miss Shirley coming back at 6? She said so. Andrew checked his watch. 3:47 p.m. 2 hours and 13 minutes. Then looked at Margaret, met her eyes directly. No anger there, no bitterness, just clarity. I'll come back. Not because you apologized. Not to get my job back. I'm doing this because when that system fails, real people get hurt. Businesses that depend on those payments. Workers whose paychecks route through that infrastructure. That's bigger than what happened between us. He stood, steady despite everything, walked to his bedroom. Came back 30 seconds later, wearing a different shirt. Clean, pressed, kissed Emily's forehead. Long, gentle. I'm going to fix the bad thing, okay? Emily's voice was small, worried. Will you be home for dinner? I don't know, baby, but I'll try. Okay, Daddy. Emily held up the stuffed rabbit, made it wave its paw. Andrew almost smiled. Almost, then walked to the door, paused there, turned to Margaret, his expression serious. Final. One thing you need to understand. When we get there, I'm in charge of the technical response. No interruptions, no questions about my methods, no second guessing. You want this saved, you let me work. Agreed? Agreed. They walked to Margaret's car. She drove. Andrew sat in the passenger seat, silent, already running calculations, building strategies. She could see it in his expression, the way his eyes moved, tracking invisible problems, mapping solutions. She didn't try to make conversation, just drove. Fast but careful, her phone buzzed. Text from the CTO, situation deteriorating. Losses mounting. ETA? Margaret texted back one-handed. 10 minutes? Andrew spoke for the first time since they left his apartment. Make it 5. Margaret pressed the accelerator. They arrived at 4:11 p.m. 91 minutes since the restart. The 90-minute window Andrew had predicted was almost gone. Andrew walked into the operations center. The room changed. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned. Engineers looked up from their screens. Relief, visible, tangible. Like air suddenly returning to a room that had been suffocating. Robert Williams was at the back. His face went rigid, jaw tight. Eyes narrow, Kevin stood up from his station. Started to speak. Andrew? Andrew's voice cut through the noise, quiet. But it carried. Authority that had nothing to do with title. Everything to do with competence. Everyone to your stations. I need current system state. Full log access. Verbal summary of every intervention attempted since restart. Now, people moved fast. No hesitation, Williams stepped forward. Face flushed. Jackson, you were terminated yesterday. You have no authority to. Margaret's voice was sharp as broken glass, cold as winter. Mr. Williams, step aside. Andrew leads this crisis response. Anyone who interferes will be terminated immediately. Williams's expression cracked. Surprise, then anger. Then something like fear creeping in at the edges. He stepped back, mouth tight. Silent Andrew didn't acknowledge the exchange. Didn't waste a second on Williams. Moved directly to the primary console. Didn't sit. Stood, scanned the screens, all 24 monitors. Cascading failures displayed across everyone. Kevin joined him. Started the verbal summary. Professional, concise. Attempted rollback at 1300. Failed. System state corruption. Tried manual isolation of affected nodes at 1315. Failed. Interdependencies we couldn't map. Attempted to rebuild authentication pathway at 1337. Failed. Missing configuration parameters. Andrew listened. Didn't interrupt. His eyes moved across the monitors, reading data, processing, analyzing. 8 seconds of silence after Kevin finished. Then Andrew started distributing work, surgical precision. No wasted words, Kevin. Stations 3 and 5. Isolate payment routing layer. Redirect affected transactions to backup authentication pathway. Configuration file in my personal directory. Folder labeled BR override. Kevin moved immediately. No questions, Chen. Network monitoring. Real-time traffic analysis. Flag anything routing outside verified endpoints. Feed results directly to my screen. Chen nodded. Fingers already flying, Rodriguez. Prep controlled failover enterprise accounts over 100,000. Manual validation for every transaction above that threshold. Rodriguez pulled up account management. Andrew turned to the CTO. Contact legal. Draft scripted message for our 3 largest enterprise clients. Acknowledge temporary technical issue. Emphasize funds are secure. Do not mention breach. Do not trigger contractual escalation clauses. The CTO hesitated. Timeline? 90 minutes. Full resolution or complete failure. Nothing in between. The CTO's face went pale, but he pulled out his phone. Started making calls. Margaret stood at the edge of the working area, watching, not interfering, learning what real leadership looked like. Andrew turned to Kevin. Pull up outbound traffic logs. Last 40 minutes. Kevin complied. Data flooded the screen. Thousands of transactions. Normal and abnormal mixed together, Andrew pointed. There. Those routing anomalies. Follow them. Kevin traced the pathways. His expression shifted. Concentration to confusion to horror. They're channeling funds through shell accounts. 3 separate jurisdictions. They're not stealing yet. They're staging, waiting for peak transaction volume tomorrow morning to maximize the take, which meant the attack was still in setup phase. Still preventable, if Andrew worked fast enough. He started typing. Rapid commands, configuration changes, system overrides. His hands moved faster than Kevin had ever seen. The monitors began to respond. Red zones shifted to amber, slowly, painfully slowly. But moving, Margaret remained at the edge, watching. A client services representative rushed toward her. Patricia, we have JP Morgan on the line demanding explanation for failed $2.3 million wire transfer. Andrew didn't even look up. Tell them we're executing emergency security protocol. Full resolution within 90 minutes. Funds are secure. Patricia turned to Margaret. Looking for confirmation. Margaret nodded. Those exact words. Go. Patricia hesitated one more second. Then left. Andrew kept working. 63 minutes left. Andrew stood abruptly. Kevin, come with me. Where are we going? Server room. They moved fast down the corridor, through security doors, into the cold. The server room was 58 degrees. Always. Kevin shivered immediately. Andrew knelt on the concrete floor, opened the cable management panel, started disconnecting specific cables, specific ports. Kevin watched. What are we doing? Physical disconnect of compromised segments. They can't route through pathways that don't physically exist. His hands moved with absolute certainty. No hesitation. He knew exactly which cables, which ports, which connections. 5 minutes of intense work. Sweat on Andrew's forehead despite the cold, then complete. Let's go, back to the operations center. 54 minutes left. The amber zones were spreading, overcoming the red. Transaction queue starting to stabilize, but not fast enough. Andrew pulled up a secondary screen, started building something new. Complex, layered. Kevin leaned over. What's that? Decoy pathway, fake vulnerability. Make it look like our real restoration effort. Why? Because they're still in the system, still watching, still adapting in real time. If we can make them focus resources on the decoy, we can rebuild the actual authentication layer through a hidden secondary route. Kevin's eyes widened, understanding dawning. You're making them look the wrong way, exactly. Andrew executed the decoy deployment, then immediately started building the real restoration pathway. Hidden, encrypted, routing through backup systems the attackers wouldn't know existed, because they hadn't been watching for 72 hours straight. But Andrew had. 41 minutes left. Robert Williams approached Margaret. She was still standing at the edge of the room, arms crossed, watching Andrew work. Williams kept his voice low. Confidential. Ms. Anderson, this is taking too long. We should bring in external security consultants. I have contacts at. Andrew turned, fast, his expression ice. Voice, hard. Mr. Williams. Why did my escalation 72 hours ago specify a 48-hour resolution window? Williams went defensive immediately, straightened, face flushing. I'm not discussing personnel matters in the middle of. Andrew cut across him. No mercy, because I calculated exactly how long I could hold the breach manually before it became unstoppable. You ignored that escalation. Told me not to create alarm. Why? What was more important than a level 3 security breach? Complete silence in the room. Every engineer stopped working, stopped breathing. Margaret stepped forward. Mr. Williams, answer the question. Williams's jaw tightened. I made a judgment call based on incomplete. Kevin spoke up from his station. Quiet but clear. I have emails here. Williams to Wellington Executive Headhunters. Discussing VP position at competitor, dated Tuesday, 9:43 a.m. Subject line. Clean exit time. The silence deepened. Became something physical, crushing. Andrew's voice was quiet now. quicker than before, which somehow made it worse. You buried my escalation because you were leaving. Didn't want an incident on your record before your new job. Williams opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, face red. That's speculation. You can't. Margaret's voice cut through like a blade. Clean, final, security. Remove Mr. Williams from the building. Effective immediately, 2 security officers moved in. Williams's face flushed darker. Anger, embarrassment. You'll regret this, Anderson. I have board connections. I can make your life. The board will receive a full report, including the part where your negligence nearly destroyed this company. Get him out. The officers took Williams by the arms, escorted him toward the exit. His protests faded as the door closed behind them. Andrew had already turned back to his screens. Didn't waste another second on Williams. Didn't gloat. Didn't celebrate. Just worked. 37 minutes left. The hidden authentication pathway was rebuilding, node by node, slowly. But the attackers had noticed something was wrong. Their activity spiked. Probing, testing, looking for what changed. Andrew tracked their movements, adjusted his defenses in real time. Chess against an opponent who could see the board but not his strategy. 29 minutes left. Andrew stopped typing. Turned to Margaret. I need authorization for a 15-minute hard shutdown of all client-facing services. Margaret's stomach dropped. That will trigger penalty clauses in our enterprise contracts. Those clauses have force majeure exceptions for security emergencies. The penalties for this breach completing are exponentially worse. How much worse? Try complete company extinction. Margaret didn't hesitate. Authorized. Do it. Andrew turned to the CTO. Still on his phone in the corner, announced the shutdown. 15 minutes. Starting in 90 seconds, the CTO grabbed the company-wide comm system microphone. Attention all personnel. Emergency system maintenance begins in 90 seconds. All client-facing services will be offline for 15 minutes. This is not a drill. Andrew pulled up the master control interface. Started coordinating with every engineer in the room. On my mark, we execute 17 configuration changes in exact sequence. Each change must complete before the next begins. Anyone gets out of sync, the entire thing fails. Understood? Heads nodded around the room. Kevin, changes 1 through 4. Chen, 5 through 8. Rodriguez, 9 through 12. I handle 13 through 17. He pulled up the countdown timer. Large. Visible to everyone. Shut down in 10 seconds. The room held its breath. 9, 8, 7 engineers positioned at their stations. Hands over keyboards. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Execute. The system went dark. All client-facing services offline. The countdown started. 15, 14:59. 14:58. Andrew's fingers moved. Fast, precise, like a concert pianist. Change 13, execute, verify. Change 14, execute, verify. Around the room, other engineers worked their sequences. 12:47 remaining. Change 12 failed. Rodriguez's screen flashed error. Red. Andrew didn't even look up. Didn't break rhythm. Rodriguez. Alternate configuration path. File named contingency 12 in emergency directory. Rodriguez found it. Executed. Success. Green. 11:53 remaining. Chan 15 triggered an unexpected cascade. Secondary systems trying to compensate for the shutdown. Trying to help, making it worse. Andrew rerouted through backup logic. Manual override. 98 seconds burned doing it. 9:15 remaining. 3 changes left, somewhere outside this building. Emily was probably having dinner with Shirley. Probably talking about her day at school. Probably wondering when Daddy would come home. Andrew pushed the thought away. Focused. Chalm 16. Execute, verify. Success. 6:42 remaining. Chalm 17. The final one. The authentication layer rebuild. Everything else was set up. This was the moment. If this failed, nothing else mattered. Andrew's hands hovered over the keyboard. He'd built this configuration in his head while driving back from his apartment. Tested it mentally 17 different ways. It would work, or it wouldn't. No middle ground. He executed. The screen went blank. Loading. Processing. Everyone in the room stopped working. Stopped breathing. Just watched. The screen refreshed. Green status. Propagating across all nodes. The Hathod Ocean layer rebuilding. Stable, secure. Intrusion pathway closed. Trigger neutralized. 4:37 remaining on the countdown. Andrew exhaled. Long. Slow. First full breath in what felt like hours. We're secure. Bring client services back online. The CTO initiated the restart sequence. Systems came back up, one by one. Green lights spreading across the monitoring dashboards. Information queue processing normally. No errors, no failures, no suspicious routing. The room erupted. Not celebration. Not cheering. Just the sound of people who could finally breathe again. Who'd been holding their breath for 90 minutes and could finally let it out. Kevin slumped in his chair. We did it. Holy hell, we actually did it. Andrew didn't respond. Just kept watching the screens, making sure, verifying, triple-checking every indicator. Margaret approached slowly, carefully. Is it over, the immediate crisis? Yes. Full security audit still needed. System hardening. Formal documentation of everything built this week. Need to identify where Williams's negligence created other vulnerabilities. How long will that take? 6 weeks. Minimum, Margaret nodded. Then we start tomorrow. Andrew finally looked at her. Really looked at her. I need to pick up my daughter. Go. We'll handle the rest. Andrew stood. His legs were unsteady. Exhaustion catching up now that adrenaline was fading. Kevin grabbed his arm. Steadied him. You good? I'm fine. You look like you're about to pass out. I'm fine. Kevin didn't let go. At least let me drive you. Andrew shook his head. I've got it. He walked toward the exit, each step deliberate, controlled, fighting his body's need to collapse. The engineers watched him leave. This time people spoke. Quiet thank yous, respectful nods. Acknowledgement. The door closed behind him. Margaret stayed, watching the screen stabilize, watching the team document everything. Watching the company she'd almost destroyed pull itself back from the edge. The CTO approached. Preliminary damage assessment. Approximately $840,000 in reconciliation costs versus projected losses if breach had completed. North of $50 million. Margaret closed her eyes. Schedule emergency board session. 90 minutes from now. Full incident report. Yes, ma'am. She stood there for another moment, then walked back to her office. Tomorrow she'd face the board. Tonight, she needed to think about what kind of leader she wanted to be. The emergency board session started at 7 p.m. sharp. Margaret walked into the conference room. 12 faces turned toward her. Department heads, the CTO, board technical liaison. 2 members who'd flown in from the East Coast specifically for this. She took her seat at the head of the table, opened her laptop, pulled up the incident report. No preamble, no softening. Just truth. Before we begin, I need to state something clearly. What happened today was preventable. The breach was detected 72 hours in advance. Proper escalation was blocked, and I terminated the engineer who'd been containing it. Those failures are mine to own. The board chair leaned forward. Ms. Anderson, we're here to understand the sequence of events, not to assign blame prematurely. The blame isn't premature. It's accurate. Let me walk you through what happened. Margaret presented the timeline. Monday night. Andrew's discovery at 11:47 p.m. Tuesday morning. 8:36 a.m. escalation to Robert Williams. Williams's suppression. Wednesday. Andrew's 48-hour defensive effort documented hour by hour. Thursday morning. Her termination of Andrew at 7:45 a.m. based on 10 seconds of observation. Friday afternoon. 12:47 p.m. restart that triggered everything Andrew had warned about. She showed Williams's emails to the headhunter. Timestamped Tuesday morning. 17 minutes after Andrew's escalation. Subject line. Clean exit timeline. She showed Andrew's documentation. 47 pages. Technical notes. Warnings. Explicit instructions. She showed the damage assessment. $840,000 in reconciliation costs. Versus projected losses exceeding $50 million. A board member spoke up. Older. Distinguished. Skeptical. So Jackson prevented a catastrophic breach. Was terminated for it. Then returned voluntarily to save the company anyway? That's correct. Why would he do that? Margaret met the board member's eyes. Direct. Because when I asked him, he said real people would get hurt if the system failed. Workers whose paychecks depend on our infrastructure. Businesses that depend on our payments. He came back for them. Not for me. Not for his job. For people he'd never meet who were counting on our system to work. Silence around the table. Uncomfortable. Profound. The board chair cleared his throat. Where is Mr. Jackson now? He left at 6:15 to pick up his daughter from a neighbor. He's been awake for approximately 76 of the last 96 hours. His daughter is 7 years old. His wife died 3 years ago. He's been raising her alone while carrying institutional knowledge this company never bothered to formally document. Another board member. And Williams? Terminated. Escorted from the building at 4:32 p.m. Do we have legal exposure? The general counsel answered. Precise. Professional. Williams's suppression of a known security threat creates significant liability for him personally. His termination was justified. We're on solid ground. The board chair looked at Margaret. What are your recommendations going forward? Margaret pulled up her next slide. 3 bullet points. Clear, specific, non-negotiable. First, formal revision of escalation protocols. Frontline engineers get direct access to executive leadership for security concerns. No intermediate management can block it. No exceptions. Heads nodded around the table. Second, mandatory shift rotation standards. No single person can become a critical point of failure through exhaustion. We build redundancy into our staffing model. More nods. Third, Whistleblower protection policy. Engineers who raise legitimate security concerns are protected from professional retaliation. Full stop, the board chair made notes. These are structural changes. Significant cultural shift. What about Jackson specifically? I'm recommending immediate reinstatement, significant compensation adjustment, and promotion to Vice President of Infrastructure Security, a board member spoke up. Younger, tech background. That's a substantial jump. From senior engineer to VP, his institutional knowledge is irreplaceable. His technical capability is unmatched. And his judgment under pressure just saved this company from extinction. He's earned it 10 times over. The board chair looked around the table. Any objections? No one spoke. Then we're agreed. Draft the offer. Have it ready by Monday morning. He looked back at Margaret. Anything else? Margaret hesitated. This wasn't protocol, wasn't normal. But normal had almost destroyed them. She stood. Yes, I need to say something. Not as CEO. As a person who made a terrible mistake, the room shifted. Attention sharpening. Yesterday morning I fired Andrew Jackson before hearing a single complete sentence from him. I made that decision based on an image. A man sleeping at his desk, surrounded by alerts I didn't understand. It confirmed what I'd already decided to believe about the culture I was inheriting. Comfortable, complacent, negligent. Her voice didn't waver, didn't soften. I was wrong, catastrophically wrong. My error nearly cost this company everything it's built over decades. I am sorry to Andrew Jackson. I'm saying this publicly because the failure was public. The acknowledgement should be too, and I'm saying it to all of you because you need to know the kind of leader you have. One who can admit when she's wrong, and one who will do everything in her power to never make that mistake again. Margaret sat back down. Her hands were shaking. She folded them in her lap. Hidden beneath the table, the room was very still. The board chair studied her, long enough that it became uncomfortable. Then, that takes courage, Ms. Anderson. Admitting fault publicly. Most executives spend their entire careers avoiding that moment. You faced it in week 1. The question now is what you do with the lesson. I plan to lead differently. Starting tomorrow. Good. Then let's move to next steps. The meeting continued for another 90 minutes. Security audit timeline. Client communication strategy. Regulatory reporting requirements. Insurance claims. PR management, every detail. Every contingency. By the time they finished, it was 8:47 p.m. Margaret walked back to her office. Alone, sat at her desk, looked at the darkened city through her window, thought about Andrew, about Emily, about what it meant to actually see people instead of just looking at them. Her phone buzzed. Text from Kevin. Simple. Jackson made it home safe. Thought you'd want to know. Margaret typed back. Thank you. Then pulled up a blank document and started writing notes, plans, changes, a different kind of leadership. Starting now. Monday morning, 8 a.m. Andrew walked into the operations center. First time since Friday. He'd spent the weekend with Emily. Actual time. No laptop. No phone calls. Just them. They'd gone to the park Saturday. Fed the ducks. Pushed Emily on the swings until his arms ached. Sunday, they'd watched a movie. Made pancakes for breakfast. Emily had talked non-stop about her science project. Andrew had listened. Really listened. Now he was back ready to start the security audit. Document everything he'd built. Begin the long process of making the infrastructure actually defensible by someone other than just him. Kevin met him at the entrance. Jackson. You're early. Figured I'd get a head start on the documentation. Kevin's expression was weird, uncomfortable. About that, Margaret wants to see you. Her office, said 8:15. Andrew checked his watch. 8:03. What's this about? She didn't say. But you should probably go. Andrew nodded, walked to the executive floor. Margaret's assistant waved him through immediately. No waiting, no screening. Margaret was at her desk. Stood when he entered. Professional, formal Andrew. Thanks for coming. Please sit. He sat, wary. Margaret slid a folder across the desk. This is from the board. Reviewed and approved Friday night. Andrew opened it. Read the first page. Employment offer. Vice President of Infrastructure Security. Salary number that made his chest tight. Benefits package. Stock options. Immediate effective date. He looked up. This is justified. You save the company. You've been carrying institutional knowledge for years without recognition. You deserve this. Andrew set the folder down, carefully. Before we talk about titles or compensation, I have 3 requirements. Non-negotiable. Margaret's eyebrows lifted. Slightly. Surprised? Requirements? First, the escalation protocol you mentioned Friday. I need to see it in writing. Engineers get direct access to executive leadership for security concerns. No management interference. Ever. Already drafted. Legal is reviewing language today. You'll have it by Wednesday, 2nd. Shift rotation standards. Maximum consecutive hours. Mandatory rest periods. Built into policy. Enforced without exception. HR is working on implementation now. Should be finalized this week. Third, whistleblower protection. Engineers who raise legitimate security alarms are protected from professional retaliation. Full stop. No ambiguity. Margaret pulled out another folder. Thicker than the first. I had these drafted over the weekend. All 3 policies. I was planning to review them with you this morning. She slid it across the desk. You want to spend your leverage on protecting other people. That tells me everything I need to know about your priorities. Andrew opened the folder. Read through the policy documents, slowly, carefully, looking for loopholes, exceptions, ways they could be circumvented. Found none. Thorough, well written. Exactly what he'd asked for. He looked up. These are good, they're necessary, you showed us that. Now, do you accept the VP position? Andrew closed the folder, on one condition, which is, I still spend time in the server room, still do hands-on work. I'm not interested in becoming another executive who doesn't understand the infrastructure they're supposedly managing. Margaret almost smiled. Agreed. Anything else? I need to be able to pick up my daughter from school. 3 p.m. every day, non-negotiable, I'll put it in writing. Company policy. Family obligations are protected time. No meeting scheduled during that hour for anyone on your team. He stood, extended his hand. Then we have a deal. Margaret shook it. Firm, professional. Welcome back, Andrew. Week 1, Andrew's new office had a window, overlooked the city, small. But he put 2 photos on his desk. Emily with her stuffed rabbit, smiling, gap-toothed, and the old one. Andrew with Linda and baby Emily, 7 years ago, when everything was different. The new escalation protocol was posted in the operations center Wednesday morning. Printed. Laminated. Mounted on the wall where everyone could see it. Enger started using it immediately. Small concerns at first, testing whether it was real, whether they'd actually be heard. A junior engineer escalated a configuration issue Thursday afternoon. Sent it directly to Margaret's inbox per the new protocol. Margaret responded within 90 minutes. Personally, asked clarifying questions. Authorized the fix, the engineer told everyone. Word spread fast. By Friday, 3 more escalations. Margaret responded to all of them, same day. Every time, the message spread faster. This wasn't performance. This wasn't theater. This was real. The culture was shifting, slowly but unmistakably. Week 2, Margaret spent Tuesday afternoon in the engineering department. Not inspecting, not auditing, asking questions, learning how people actually worked. An engineer named Sarah mentioned a recurring configuration issue. Small, annoying, not critical enough to escalate under the old system. Margaret asked why it hadn't been fixed. We submitted a ticket 8 months ago. It's in the backlog. Priority 4, show me. Sarah pulled up the ticket. Margaret read it, frowned. This is a 15-minute fix according to your notes. Why wasn't it prioritized? We were told to focus on new features. Bug fixes could wait. That was the old standard. Margaret made a note on her phone. Not anymore. If something impedes your work, it gets fixed. That's the new standard. I'll have this addressed by end of week. Sarah blinked, surprised. Really? Really? Margaret walked away. Sarah turned to her colleague, whispered, did that just happen? Word spread, again, faster this time. Thursday morning, the configuration issue was fixed. Deployed. Done. Sarah sent a thank you email to Margaret. Got a response in 20 minutes. That's what the protocol is for. Keep using it. Week 3, Andrew was training 2 junior engineers, Jessica and Marcus, walking them through the authentication architecture. Not just how it worked, why it was built that way. The decisions behind the design. Jessica asked a complex question about failover logic. Specific, technical. The kind of question that showed she was really thinking about it. Andrew grinned. Actually grinned. That's a great question. Let's work through it together. He pulled up the system diagrams, walked her through the decision tree, showed her how to think about edge cases, how to anticipate failures, how to build systems that degraded gracefully instead of catastrophically. Jessica left the session glowing, told everyone who'd listen. Jackson actually listens, doesn't make you feel stupid for asking, explains things like he wants you to understand. Not like he's showing off. The junior engineers started seeking Andrew out. Regularly. Daily. He made time for all of them. By Friday, he had a waiting list. Engineers asking to shadow him, learn from him. He set up office hours, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 3 to 5 p.m. Before he picked up Emily, anyone could drop in, ask anything. No stupid questions, no judgment. It filled up immediately. Week 4, Margaret sat in on an operations review Monday morning, watching the monitoring systems, learning the patterns, the rhythms. What normal looked like versus what concerning looked like. An engineer approached mid-meeting. Hesitant, young, Ms. Anderson. We're seeing elevated latency in the European payment queue. Not critical yet, but trending up. Margaret's first instinct was frustration. Why hadn't this been caught earlier? Why wasn't it already fixed? Her second instinct, the one she chose. Show me what you're seeing. Walk me through it. The engineer relaxed, shoulders dropping, explained the pattern, what he'd already tried, what he was planning next. His reasoning, Margaret asked clarifying questions. Then, what do you recommend? I think we should increase buffer allocation for the European node. Preemptively, before it becomes a problem, do it, and document the decision process. I want to understand how you made that call, what data you used. The engineer left, confident, empowered, trusted. Kevin watched the whole exchange from across the room, caught Margaret's eye after. Nodded approval. She was learning. Week 5, Saturday morning. Andrew needed to pick up some documentation from his office. 20-minute trip. He brought Emily with him. She wandered the operations center while Andrew grabbed what he needed. Looking at all the monitors, fascinated by the numbers, the graphs, the colors. Several engineers were working weekend shifts, saw Emily, saw Andrew, watched them together, the way Andrew crouched down to Emily's level, explaining what the screens showed, patient, present, using simple words, making it interesting. See those numbers, baby? They show how many people are using our systems right now, all over the country, buying things, sending money, running their businesses. That's a lot of people, Daddy, it is. That's why we have to make sure everything works right. Kevin approached, knelt beside Emily. Eye level. Your dad is the smartest person here. We're lucky to work with him. Emily beamed, pride radiating from her. I know. He's my hero. Kevin looked up at Andrew, something unspoken passing between them. Respect. Understanding. After they left, one of the weekend engineers turned to Kevin. He spent 48 hours straight saving this company, while she was waiting at home. And he still got fired. Kevin nodded. Quiet. Yeah. But he came back anyway. Not for the title. Not for the money, because people needed the system to work. That's who he is. The engineer was quiet for a moment. That's who I want to be. Then learn from him. He'll teach you if you ask. Week 6 BARD meeting, Thursday morning. Quarterly security review. Andrew presented infrastructure modernization plans. New authentication systems, redundancy protocols, automated threat detection, timeline, budget, resource allocation, comprehensive, professional. Clear. A board member questioned the budget. This is a substantial investment. 7.3 million over 3 years. Can you justify that? Margaret spoke up before Andrew could respond. After what we almost lost 2 months ago, this is non-negotiable. We're approving the full budget. No cuts. No delays. The board member looked around the table. Gauging support, no one objected. Motion carries. After the meeting, Andrew stopped by Margaret's office. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Because you're right. And I'm learning to recognize when someone knows better than me. Andrew almost smiled. That's growth. It's survival. I'm not making that mistake twice. Brief pause. Comfortable now. Professional respect built on shared experience. How's the security audit going? On schedule. Documentation should be complete in 2 weeks. Then we start the system hardening phase. Good. Keep me updated. Not because I don't trust you. Because I want to understand what you're doing. Will do. Andrew left. Margaret watched him go. Thought about how much had changed in 6 weeks. How much she'd changed. 6 months later, the infrastructure modernization was complete. New systems running smoothly. Documentation comprehensive. Training programs established. Titan Core's security posture had gone from fragile to robust. Industry analysts noticed, started citing them as an example. Best practices. Case studies. Andrew's team had grown. 15 engineers now. All trained personally by him. All carrying forward his philosophy. Build redundancy. Document everything. Never assume systems can't fail. Prepare for the worst. Hope for the best. Margaret's leadership had transformed too. She still made quick decisions. Still held high standards. Still demanded excellence. But now she listened first. Asked questions. Valued input from all levels. Changed her mind when presented with better information. The company culture had shifted. Quietly. Gradually. But unmistakably, people felt heard, valued, trusted. Turnover dropped. Morale rose. Productivity increased. The numbers told the story Margaret's instincts had missed that first morning. Late afternoon, 6 months and 2 weeks after the crisis, Margaret was heading to her car. Long day. Good day. Productive. She saw Andrew near the entrance, crouched down, adjusting Emily's backpack strap, making sure it sat right on her shoulders. Emily was talking fast, animated, hands moving, describing something that happened at school with the excitement only a 7-year-old could muster. Andrew listened, completely focused, not checking his phone, not distracted, not thinking about work. His face was different than any expression Margaret had seen in meetings, in presentations, in crisis situations. Open, soft, purely present, lit from within by love, not VP of Infrastructure Security, Not the man who'd saved the company, just a father at the end of a long day. The most important role he'd ever have. Margaret waited. Didn't approach immediately. This moment belonged to them. Then walked over, casual, friendly, held out something small. The stuffed rabbit, Mr. Hopper's, the one that had been at Andrew's apartment that day. That had somehow ended up in Margaret's coat pocket during the chaos. That she'd just found yesterday while cleaning out her car. "I think this belongs to you." Emily's face lit up like sunrise. "Mr. Hopper's. I thought I lost him forever." She grabbed the rabbit, hugged it tight, tucked it under her arm where it belonged. Safe home. Andrew looked at Margaret. No tension between them now. No awkwardness. No performance. Just two people who'd survived something difficult from opposite sides. Who'd learned from it, grown from it. Emily looked up at Margaret, curious, direct. "Are you Daddy's friend now?" Margaret smiled. Small, genuine. The first real smile Andrew had seen from her. "I hope so. Good. Daddy needs more friends." Andrew's expression shifted. Gentle amusement. "Affection, Emily. What do you say?" "Thank you for bringing Mr. Hopper's back. And for saying sorry to Daddy." Margaret blinked. Surprised, she remembered. "You're welcome, sweetie." Brief pause. Comfortable silence. Margaret turned to Andrew. "There's a new junior engineer starting Monday. Brilliant. Rough edges. Reminds me of someone. Would you mentor her? I'll make sure she gets a fair shot." Margaret nodded. That's all anyone can ask for. They parted ways. Margaret to her car. Andrew and Emily to his. Margaret sat in the driver's seat. Watched them walk away in her rearview mirror. Emily was skipping. Andrew was listening to her talk. His hand on her shoulder. Protective. Present. Something about the image made Margaret's chest tight. She'd almost destroyed this. Almost taken away Emily's father. Almost robbed that little girl of the person who loved her most. Because of 10 seconds of judgment, the weight of that would stay with her. Should stay with her. A reminder. A lesson. She started the car. Drove home. Later that week. Wednesday evening, Margaret's grandfather called. "I heard good things about the quarterly review. The infrastructure modernization is ahead of schedule. Under budget. That's not what I meant." "I heard you're leading differently." Margaret leaned back in her office chair. Late, dark outside. Most people gone home. "I'm trying to. Learning as I go. That's all anyone can do. You know what the hardest part of leadership is?" "What?" "Admitting when you're wrong. Most people spend their whole careers avoiding that. Building structures to protect themselves from ever having to say those words. You faced it in week 1. That's going to serve you well. It almost destroyed the company. But it didn't. Because you fixed it. Because you learned from it. That's what matters, not perfection. Growth." They talked for another 20 minutes. Business, strategy, life. The conversation they'd had versions of since Margaret was young. By the time Margaret hung up, it was dark outside. She looked at her calendar. Tomorrow, full data meetings, budget reviews, strategic planning, but also 3 p.m. Note she'd added herself. "Remember, Andrew picks up Emily. No meeting scheduled during that hour for anyone on infrastructure team. Small change. But symbolic family obligations matter. People matter, not just as resources, as humans." 1 year after the crisis, Andrew's office. Late afternoon, reviewing security logs. Routine check, finding nothing. Which was good. Margaret knocked. Entered with 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this." Andrew accepted. "Thanks. How'd the board meeting go?" "They approved the infrastructure expansion plan. Full budget. 3-year timeline. Credited your presentation. It was a team effort. That's what you always say." Andrew shrugged. Took a sip of coffee. Good coffee. Not the burnt break room stuff. Margaret sat in the chair across from his desk. "I've been thinking about that morning. The one where I fired you. Ancient history. Not to me. I still think about it sometimes. Wonder how close we came. What would have happened if you hadn't come back?" "We didn't come close. Because I did come back. That's what matters. Because you came back. After everything I did. You came back." Andrew set down his coffee. Met her eyes. Direct. Honest. "I came back because it was the right thing to do. For people who needed the system to work. For workers whose paychecks depended on it. For businesses running on our infrastructure. Not about you or me. Bigger than both of us." Margaret nodded. "I know, but I'm still grateful." Silence. Comfortable. Built on mutual respect. Andrew checked his watch. "I need to pick up Emily. Go family first." Andrew stood, grabbed his jacket. At the door, turned back. Something he wanted to say. "Margaret, you've become a good leader. Not because you stopped making mistakes. Because you started learning from them. That's the difference." Margaret's smile was genuine. Warm. High praise coming from you. Andrew almost smiled back. "Don't let it go to your head." He left. Margaret stayed in his office for another moment, looking at the photos on his desk. Emily with her rabbit, bigger now. Growing up, Andrew with Linda and baby Emily, frozen in time. 7 years ago, Evidence of a life built around love, around sacrifice, around doing the right thing even when it cost everything. She stood, walked back to her own office, pulled up her calendar, started planning the next quarter, but differently now, with different priority. People first, systems second, because systems fail. People endure if you let them, if you see them, if you give them the chance to show you who they really are. Exterior, school pickup area, 3:15 p.m. Andrew's car pulled up to the curb right on time like always. Emily ran out, backpack bouncing, Mr. Hoppers under her arm, never went anywhere without him now. She climbed in, buckled herself, big girl, independent. Daddy, guess what happened today? What happened? I got an A on my science project, the one about plants and sunlight. Mrs. Cooper said it was the best one in the whole class. Andrew's face split into a grin, pride, joy pure and uncomplicated. That's my brilliant girl. I'm so proud of you. Can we celebrate with ice cream? Absolutely. Tell me everything about the project. Emily launched into an excited explanation. The hypothesis, the experiment, the results, the poster board, every detail important, every word treasured. Andrew drove, listened, asked questions, engaged completely. They stopped at the ice cream shop, their spot, sat outside at the small table. Emily with chocolate chip, Andrew with vanilla. The afternoon sun was warm. The city moved around them. Traffic, people, life happening. But in that moment, just them, father and daughter. Emily looked up, thoughtful. Daddy, are you happy at work now? Andrew considered the question. Honest answer, yeah, baby. I am good, because you were sad before. When the mean lady fired you, she's not mean, she made a mistake. But she fixed it. She learned from it because she said sorry, because she changed. Saying sorry only matters if you do things differently after. If you actually learn, actually grow. Emily nodded, serious, absorbing the lesson. Like when I broke your coffee mug, I said sorry, and then I'm more careful now. Exactly like that. They finished their ice cream, drove home. Emily did homework at the dining table. Andrew made dinner, spaghetti, still her favorite after dinner. Bedtime routine, pajamas, teeth brushing. One chapter from her current book, fantasy, dragons, adventure. Andrew tucked her in, kissed her forehead. Love you, baby. Love you too, Daddy. Thank you for always coming back. Andrew paused, confusion flickering. Coming back from where? From work. Every day. You always come back. On time. You promised. And you keep your promises. His chest tightened. Love, gratitude, the weight of being everything to this small person. I'll always come back, Emily. That's a promise I'll never break, I know.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, sweetheart.
He turned off her light, left the door cracked, walked to the living room, sat on the couch. The same couch where he'd collapsed that Thursday, where Margaret had found him, where everything changed. Pulled out his laptop, not for work, just to check Emily's school calendar. Make sure he hadn't missed anything upcoming. Parent-teacher conference next week. He made a note, his phone buzzed. Text from Kevin, quick question about authentication logs. Can it wait till tomorrow? Andrew typed back, yeah, I'm off the clock, copy that. Enjoy your night. Andrew set the phone down, looked around his apartment, small, modest, but home. Emily's artwork on the refrigerator, her school schedule, his work schedule carefully organized around hers. Never overlapping, never conflicting, evidence of a life rebuilt after loss, after grief, after impossible choices, but still standing, still moving forward, still whole. He thought about Margaret, about how she'd changed, how they'd both changed, how the company had changed, about what it meant to be seen. Really seen, not as a resource, not as a line on an org chart. As a person, the crisis had almost destroyed them both, but it had also revealed something important. When you strip away titles and assumptions and judgments, when you see people for who they actually are, what they're capable of, what they care about, sometimes you find something worth protecting. Sometimes you build something better than what you had before. Not perfect, but real. Honest, built on mutual respect. That's all anyone can really ask for. 6 weeks after that, company all-hands meeting. Quarterly review. 200 employees packed into the main auditorium. Margaret presenting results. Revenue up 12% year-over-year. Client retention 97%. Security infrastructure now industry-leading. Media coverage positive. Analyst ratings upgraded. She talked about the turnaround, the cultural shift, the new standards, the values, then paused. Looked out at the audience. I want to recognize someone. Andrew Jackson, VP of Infrastructure Security. Stand up. Andrew stood, uncomfortable with the attention. Preferred working in the background, Margaret continued. A year ago, Andrew saved this company, not just from a cyber attack, from itself, from a culture that valued appearance over substance, from leadership that judged without listening. He did it quietly, without recognition, without asking for anything in return. Because it needed doing, she paused. Let that sink in. But more than that, He came back after I fired him. Came back for people he'd never meet. For workers whose paychecks depended on our systems. For businesses counting on our infrastructure. That's the kind of character this company needs. That's the standard we should all aspire to. Applause. Genuine. Sustained. People standing. Recognition earned. Andrew sat back down quickly, face slightly red. Kevin clapped him on the shoulder. Grinned after the meeting. People approached Andrew. Thank yous. Handshakes. Respect. He handled it gracefully, humbly. Then extracted himself, headed back to his office, work to do, systems to monitor, people depending on him. Margaret caught him in the hallway. Sorry if that was uncomfortable. It's fine. Just not used to being center of attention. You deserve recognition. I'd rather just do the work, I know. That's exactly why you deserve it. They stood in the hallway. Moment of shared understanding. How far they'd come. 6 months from now. We're launching the new authentication system. Company-wide rollout. I want you to lead the client presentation. Andrew raised an eyebrow. That's a sales role. That's a trust role. Clients need to hear from someone who knows the system inside and out, who they can trust to tell them the truth, who won't oversell or make promises we can't keep, Andrew considered. I'll do it. But I'm not wearing a suit. Margaret laughed. Actually laughed. Genuine. Deal. She walked back to her office. Andrew to his. The afternoon moved forward. Work continued. Systems ran. People went about their jobs. Titan Core Financial. Stronger than it had been. Not despite the crisis. Because of it. Because it had almost broken. Because someone had cared enough to hold it together, to come back when he didn't have to do the right thing when no one was watching, not for recognition, not for reward, because real people depended on it, because that's what you do when you understand what actually matters. You show up, you do the work, you protect what's fragile, you build systems that serve people, not the other way around. And sometimes, if you're lucky, if you're willing to learn, if you're brave enough to admit when you're wrong, people finally see you for who you've always been. And you become who you were always meant to be. Some stories don't end with perfect reconciliation. They end with something quieter, something real, something earned. Two people who learned to see each other clearly, who made mistakes, who fixed them, who built something better on the other side. A father who came home every night at 5, who never missed bedtime, who kept his promises, who showed his daughter what integrity looked like in practice. A leader who learned that authority without wisdom is just arrogance, that 10 seconds isn't enough time to know anyone, that being wrong isn't weakness. Refusing to learn from it is. A company that nearly failed, then rebuilt itself around different values. Not because someone gave a speech, because someone showed them what those values looked like when everything was on the line. Andrew Jackson spent 4 hours saving Titan Core Financial, then got fired for sleeping. But the story didn't end there. Because Andrew understood something most people forget. Something worth remembering, worth carrying forward. Your worth isn't determined by who sees it. It's determined by what you do when nobody's watching. By who you are when it costs you something. By whether you keep going when it would be easier to quit. And sometimes, eventually, if you hold on long enough, if you stay true to who you are, people finally start watching. Not because you demanded it, because you earned it, one quiet day at a time. That's the story. That's the lesson. That's what matters. Everything else is just noise.